Greetings, Marv Gardens here, reporting in for this Tuesday day. How's everybody doing? New week, new materials. Um, Today, as always, we'll be talking about history, and today we will be talking about a concept that you may have seen in your previous scholarly pursuits, but we want to paint you a nice picture. Hint, hint. And today we're going to be talking about political atlases. Now you probably wonder, that's a weird phrase. What is a political atlas? A political atlas is simply the map of the world as it is politically dictated. And most of the time it mimics what you would see on a map, on a globe, on a yada yada yada. But as you know, politically things change, borders change, names change, yada yada yada. The reason I decided to talk about a political atlas is because I feel like that's the direction I started in with the whole domestic and foreign affairs. I feel like it is a nice close to that whole little situation. What I'm going to be starting with first in the political atlas is the Western Hemisphere. And as far as the political atlas of the Western Hemisphere is concerned, America is the only power here. However, on a map there's other countries. There's Canada, there's Cuba, there's Haiti, the Dominican Republic, South America, which is weird though. This is a good point I wanted to point you to. Why do they call it South America even though North America is the United States of America? And South America is not formally acknowledged as a province of America. And yet the Americas is still, that just points to what what I'm talking about makes sense. The idea that politically speaking, you can draw a map that may or may not seem um uh, uh similar to the how you see the world. And I think it's funny that the Americas is called the Americas because, you know let's say this is also important because Independence Day is coming up. Let's say that the UK did succeed in the war for independence, and the United States of America was not a United States of America, but a new UK, or whatever the UK was planning on calling its territory if they had basically conquered. So you have to ask yourself then, if this is the Americas now, what would they have called it if UK had taken it over? Would they have called it the I don't know, the United Kingdom Americas? I don't know. Um, that's a little side note, interesting side note. More importantly, I feel like America is just a nice starter topic for how the political atlas is able to define the world. Because when you move over just a little bit into Europe, it's called Europe. There is no dominant political force there, in my opinion, because that's just a consequence of having neighbors. You're gonna piss somebody off if you say, yeah, I run this. This is mine. Everybody's my chunk. So that just goes to show the difference. Like, a lot of people put history into critique, but just look at the proof. If you don't believe that America really is America, look at what they call the continents: North America, South America. America is a power, a world power. So your textbooks didn't lie to you, kids. Um, On the other hand, I think it's rather interesting that Europe is called Europe and hasn't changed its name forever. Whereas America wasn't always called the Americas. It was just called at first it was just a new continent because nobody owned it. And then not we, but America made it, well, United States, excuse me, made it the Americas. Which is weird because people call America America, and they also call it the United States. But it's not America, it's the United States. Not with America, just the United States. And I feel like that's another, what you call, distinction that people miss is that the Americas is what people started calling it after the United States basically made it a permanent territory. Whereas, when it was just a newfound land, you had all the countries like, yeah, I'm about to think of something cool. I'm about to name it after a monarch. I'm about to name it after somebody important and yada yada yada. And it's funny how things turned out. Now moving back to Europe, I think it's funny how Europe is called Europe, and yet Italy is kind of like its own semi-continent, but it's still called Italy. But Italy, like when you look at how big Italy is, it's funny that Italy is not its own separate continent because even though it's connected to the mainland Europe, Italy is a pretty large piece of land. Like you wouldn't be able to walk across Italy or drive across Italy in a couple of hours. It would take a pretty long time. Well, you wouldn't drive across. You would probably drive up and down Italy. But you get the idea, right? Italy is pretty big. Moving more towards the south, you got Spain and yo, my map of Europe is terrible. Give me a second here. I must pull up a map of Europe because my brain is very finicky right now. Why did I? When is a map? Where can I get a map when you need it? Sometimes I hate technology. Oh. I forget it. Okay. I'm gonna work on the coastline in Europe and hopefully I get this right. Ireland and UK are essentially together. Working down to Spain. Why can't I find Brazil? I don't know why I can't find Brazil. See, I'm working off of a mental map here. I'm not looking at a guide, or I would already basically went over this stuff. Dang, working off of Italy. Boom, 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 boom. Mediterranean, Africa. I'll just focus on the idea that I just jumped to Africa. Okay, Africa basically, has its I don't know what to call Africa because Africa has always been a what you would call a Europe historical landmark per se because it's always been involved with Europe, so can't really the political Interesting enough, the political atlas for Africa has not changed in history. And I know that for sure because nobody can say they own Africa. Mm-mm-mm. And that within itself is a thing to marvel at, because when you're talking about a highly competitive Europe back in the day, that is crazy. Mm-mm-mm. We talking about constant wars, followed by preparation for more wars, followed by backstabbing and treaties, and more backstabbing and more treaties, and yada yada yada. So it can be very unexpected to see a land that basically that's virtually untouched by a modern Europe. When you think about the land versus city ratio, so that's something to be. That's a little interesting thing to note about. Moving to, I feel like Australia. I decided to jump all the way to Australia because I'm going to. If you look at a mental map of how I'm doing this, I started with America, then I jumped to the coast of UK, then I jumped down to Spain, then I jumped down to Italy, and then I crossed the Mediterranean to Africa. And now I'm just gonna be like, if I was sailing, what would I do next? Well, if I don't know where I'm going, I'm gonna go for Australia. So Australia is interesting because that's another country that's well, not a country, that's another continent that is a debatable topic, because no one has real interest in Australia, and yet Australia is a has its own government, is has a standing in the UN, all that stuff. And yet, why isn't it like Canada? Australia, like it's funny how Canada is not even in Europe, and yet it has ties to the UK, and yet Australia is basically anybody's land. It's like another Africa, and nobody can formally say that they own Australia, which is interesting. At the same time, when you look at the political atlas of it, it's so away from everything else. Who cares if you own it? And I feel like that was the saving grace of Australia. It's literally so removed from everybody else. Anybody stupid enough to even try to say that they want it wouldn't even be bothering anybody by saying they got it. Cause you could build whatever you want there, but it's still gonna take extra resources to make anything there work anyway. It's gonna take extra resources to keep it connected to the mainland, and it's gonna take extra resources to make sure it don't get taken. So, given all those calculations, I can see why countries or any country is like, I don't want to take those many losses. Asians, Japan, China. Another is what you call a semi-isolated political atlas, because they've always done business through the Silk Road and all that stuff. And then once Europeans finally got this sea industry going, this naval industry going, then the European Asian basically coalition started to pick up. So not surprisingly, the Asian political atlas has definitely changed, but not for the worse. Because, most of their struggles have been internally anyway. The last recent Chinese struggle was the Tiananmen Square thing, and they having problems with basically they want to have a little change of government. They want the government to not be so strict, but that's part of the culture, so I don't see why that's, I don't know. Japan has always been a war zone, because that's just the benefit of being an island country. You can basically go all out, keep it to yourself, and not have to worry about somebody trying to dehumanize you in the textbooks. Um. Moving into India and all of that stuff. India is an interesting political atlas as well because they have undergone rapid growth, which has internally within their boundaries of their political atlas basically made their country they basically became a political power off of sheer population growth, which is, and I find that to be very fascinating because in history, you know, people don't really keep up with Indian warfare or African warfare, even though if you're like a history textbook buff, then you already know about all that stuff. The little mini struggles that used to go on and all that stuff. Um, the reason why India counts as a mini struggle is because they've probably been smart to avoid the real scandals and postmodern Europe and stuff. Partly because of their difference in religion, but mostly because of their political atlas position. The reason why political atlas is so important is because it means the difference between a gunfight or a becoming an audience member. And that's just the truth of the matter, that you could be at the wrong place at the wrong time and you gotta deal with it. So the political atlas is crucial to understanding how the world sees things through through a interconnected worldview. Moving more closer into the Middle East, the Arab immigrates, whatever you call it. I don't know why they call themselves that. It's basically like a Middle East coalition. That situation has always been what you would call business. Yeah, you know how that go. Muslims, what do you sultans? There we go, sultans and what you would call unorthodox architecture. They build in their little sand palaces. I call them sand palaces is because they are literally in the desert. So funny enough, the desert kind of accentuates the structural ornateness of their style. So if you built like that anywhere else, people would be like, huh? That's a little weird. Why do you do that? But an explanation of their political atlas, they have their own internal struggles. They've had troubles with Europe as well. Um, for the most part, though, they've taken a lot of losses actually, because if you remember, at one point the Muslim, the true Muslim political atlas was huge, like huge. We talking not Holy Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire. That Muslim influence was like, and they took a lot of hits, man. They took a lot of hits, man. And that's just like most people, like political atlases don't always change off of war. Political atlases can be affected by what you would call progression, progressiveness, pro- basically when people decide to cooperate with each other and be friends, it can disintegrate political structures in the sense that um whatever that political structure was dependent on to maintain power is no longer relevant, and if it's no longer relevant, then the political atlas shifts to whatever dictates the situation. And what that means is, once the beef between Europeans and Muslims became less about land gain and all of that other stuff, then the influence of the Muslim degraded rapidly, in the form of cities that were basically Muslim controlled, receding closer back to what you would call Muslim or Muslim uh 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 Muslim like basically Muslim majority cities. So the power of the Muslim political atlas was the influence of the Muslim culture, and when the Muslim culture receded in influence, then the Muslim political atlas also receded. So I find that interesting that in the case of the Muslims, it wasn't about war; it was more about people deciding to well they lost the peace, ironically enough. um and you see that a lot now. You see that a lot because if you remember not not even right literally right before the 21st century began, the Soviet Union collapsed. Well, it ain't collapsed. It just it suffered a Muslim loss, and it turned into the USSR or something like that. And that was weird too because it's like, wow, how can people just go from supporting the states to just I don't know. I don't know what they how to explain that because the transition to the USSR was a result of direct what you call social effort. So that's kind of weird when the people work against the government to change the government, but that's just a liability that any government is susceptible to if they pressure their people too much. So I feel like that's a lesson any country can learn. And I feel like every country has learned that lesson to a certain extent. Including America. um the political atlas in general though will always be a constantly morphing thing because the idea is that the political atlas is like they're like stickies, right? And how these stickies get pulled up is by different movements. Sometimes it's social, sometimes it's economic, sometimes it's political, other times it's technological. And the reason why I say it's why technology has allowed essentially cities to or the political atlas to change is because when you have a boom in industry, right? You have to rearrange space to fit this new uh 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 these new efforts. So I feel like the UK understands what I'm talking about with that because when you're talking about literally throwing factories everywhere, then you have to take into consideration living space, and then living space turns into work reforms because people don't want to live next to essentially filth and smog and yada yada yada. And then I just it constantly you're literally re-landscaping entire cities based off of technological progression. This also happened to America when they started basically catching up with the rest of the world in technology and trying to basically get the jump and stuff. So because steam power was okay, electricity was better. Um, so that came up, Even if today you could still find, depending on the city you're in, you could still find places where train tracks used to run across. They don't run across no more, but that just goes to show how America has changed. Um, More importantly, the political atlas for I feel like the political atlas for some countries will never change, like Greenland and Iceland and all these countries that are not really in the what you would call shifting zones. Like these countries that are basically islands, but since they're bigger than a couple of people being able to fit on it, they count as countries. But even if your country isn't that big, if you're not on a mainland, i.e., a continent, then you ain't gotta really worry about your political atlas changing. Which just makes Australia just the most weirdest country, continent, whatever. Uh, 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 uh. um, let's see. Political atlases can change in more than one way too, especially when you're talking about Well, I can't really talk about superstructures because the only major changes that happened really was with the Berlin Wall and all of that stuff. A lot of countries got rearranged after that. After that whole communism thing petered out. But you can definitely change a country's atlas if you put up permanent well, not permanent, but if you put up if you basically put up extra boundaries like what we got going on in Korea and stuff. We literally split a country in half. America literally split a country in, well, United States literally split a country in half. So that's just a interesting position of how a political atlas can drastically be changed without um modifying the country. Because all they did was which is ironic because everybody used to cry about, oh, take down the Berlin Wall, take down the Berlin Wall, and then look at us. We set up a essentially a Korean wall between North and South Korea, and it's like, mm. So it's like political atlas is a finicky business, man. Finicky business. And I feel like political atlases will always be a mindset of any United States of America because we can understand political atlases in the simplest fact of a boundary. Simply of the fact that the country literally is split into boundaries. The United States is the only country which has not just city lines, but literally many country lines. And I call them many country lines because the idea is that every state makes laws for their own self. They're like, it's like if you could take Europe, right, and throw it into a united country state. Basically, if you took the European Union and put it under one political identity, which probably wouldn't work given Europe's history, but that's the United States perspective. The idea that parts can be interdivided and then interconnected at the same time and still form a single identity. Which, well, it doesn't always work out, but hey, it's been going on long enough that I feel like I don't think that people would be too okay with the idea of just saying bump it, just erase the boundaries and just make one big country. I don't think people will be okay with that, because the idea is that that's like basically saying we should just ignore all regional differences and just form one big region. Oh man, which is, yeah, that's weird. I wouldn't be okay with that. Um, but political atlases on a contextual note is basically a indication of what's going on in the world, and you know, depending on whose affairs you're talking about, the political atlas can be very different. Like there was for a long time a beef between a couple of Middle Eastern states, either Israel and Pakistan, or Israel and somebody. Israel was the Israeli army was beefing with somebody for the longest times, and they always beefing over political influence with their neighbors. Israel always is always beefing over political influence with their neighbors. So I'm like, for them, they probably see they political atlas is probably way different than how the rest of the world sees it. So it's like when you say it's like if New Jersey decided to say that New York was part of New Jersey, like instead of saying that New York is a independent state, and then New York saying no, New Jersey's part of New York, and going back and forth, yada yada yada, and all this other stuff. Um, Political atlases don't necessarily have to involve countries. You can have political atlases on a smaller level as well. In terms of religion, there's a lot of political atlases in religion. There's a lot of political atlases in society. Really, I talked about social circles previously, and that is another form of a political atlas, because it's a sense that a network of people forms a what you would call a hierarchical boundary line. And the reason why it's a hierarchical boundary line is because the idea is that to get to anybody, you have to go through somebody, which means that you have to already be started in the hierarchy, or you have to find somebody that can be a neutral correspondent for you in the hierarchy, which is a concept that I feel like a lot of people will understand, especially if you're in the United States. um Other political atlases are city versus suburban and city versus what do you call that? The country for rural. Um and then you got the what I call wasteland folk, man, the cats that be in the deserts and stuff. Like them Texas, I'm talking about them Texas cats, them Nevada cats, the Utah cats, all of that, like them that arid land over there. You can have that. I don't want it. All them wasteland cats, I'll be alright. So there's that. Political atlases can also be established by simple politicians. Really, we got Democrats and Republicans. That's the easiest. We got liberals and we got the other guys. I forgot what you call them. Traditional, sound like that. You get what I'm talking about, man. And then you can establish even more political atlases by whatever your personal views are in relation to other people, which can start a lot of problems depending on what you're arguing about. Like, you know, we got the gay rights stuff. We got talked about that already. We got talked about abortion. I talked about women's rights, voting, and all that stuff. Talked about mm, oh yeah. No. I guess in a way, kids have their own political atlas because there are policies that are literally targeted for them, at them, and all that stuff. So the adult versus kid political atlas. And then you got that little middle zone from what you call the transitional kids and stuff. Um, um Political atlases can essentially divide anything. Well, it's not really a division. It's more of a like I said, a sticky. You can put a sticky on any area defined depending on the criteria. So there's that. You got the doctors, you got the lawyers, you got the engineers. Those are all different political atlases because they all deal in different things. And they come with their own, system and jargon and yada yada yada. Doctors talk that textbook stuff. Lawyers talk that I know every rule in the book stuff. Engineers, they just like to talk about items on things that you don't talk about, like cars and stuff. Um, yeah, pilots. Like jobs are a political atlas, and it just feeds back into the societal system because you can't just say I want to be the best that I ever was at this job and walk in the building and be like, well, today's my first day. Oh man, and all that stuff. Yeah, yep. Political atlases are a very interesting topic. Historically speaking, they've always been around. I think the more interesting political atlas is guilds. I like talking about guilds because I feel like they're the reason why the world is messed up today. The world forgot that guilds solved everybody's problems, and they exist. They're just in a form. Oh yeah, business is its own political atlas, and you don't gotta be the CEO. But I'm talking about being involved and identified as a business person carries his own political atlas because we got the Wall Street heads. Frankly, after that, if you work in New York, you're basically on the same level anyway. If you don't work in New York, you're a little lower. It's okay. And then after that, yeah, you got everybody looks down on the entrepreneurs. Oh man, it okay though. Um, but yeah, political atlases are not more of a division thing. Like usually, it's easy to think of things as categories, but political atlases are simply what you would call. It's like my illustration of the modern day guild, basically. So the idea behind the political atlas is that it identifies a group of people based on a specific criteria that suggests that these people are a entity because of whatever the criteria is. And then the idea behind the reason why it is a political atlas is because you would think that the idea is that you just can't enter a political atlas by simply associating. You have to be an affiliate or evolved in some form or manner, which brings the political side and the atlas side, and is that ideally every entity with a specific criteria is going to have a place of business. So that place of business is why you just can't walk up to a person in a political atlas and be like, "What up, buddy?" um, this appeals to just about any type of group that can be politically atlas. What you can literally take a city, right? Take all the buildings in the city, all the buildings that are businesses, all the buildings that offer some type of service, and essentially political atlas your entire city, which is kind of cool if you're nerdy like that. But it's just a little idea for understanding what I'm trying to get to here. So what is the point of talking about a political atlas? To essentially give you the mind state of the guild, because that is the reason why people don't make it. They forget the general principles of entering a guild. A guild by definition is a association, and to associate you must go through the hoops. You must pay tribute to a guild before they will associate you, before they will associate with you. It's like a fraternity or a fraternity or a sorority, but not. You don't have to go to college to be in a political atlas. You don't have to be in a job to be a political atlas. You just have to be able to be identified with a group of people to be in a political atlas. To put that into perspective, if you ever heard of Gaming Illuminati, right? See, I chose them because I'm picking on them a little bit right now. It's alright. Gaming Illuminati is a political atlas because the idea is that they are what you call personal computer enthusiasts, right? And the reason why they are personal computer enthusiasts is because their whole motive, right, is that the personal computer is the ideal gaming rig, right? And the reason why it's the ideal gaming rig is because you don't need to constantly berate yourself with extra accessories, extra yada yada yada. You just click and download, and you essentially have the same game that people will be waiting months, weeks, whatever, to play at your disposal without needing to basically do everything else that people do. And the reason why they're political atlas is because if you don't game, you can't associate. If you don't own a personal computer, you can't associate. If you don't basically participate in keeping up with technology, you can't associate. So that's just how that works out. So I feel like they are the most relevant example because that's something they are on YouTube as well. This is not a shout out. This is a what you would call me basically knocking two birds out with one stone. So they are they are business. Don't get me wrong. They are business. And these aren't people you could approach them on the street and be like, hey, I watch your videos, but these aren't people that you would just meet and be like, I watch your videos, let's start hanging out. Like you can't just this isn't a even if we were talking about kids, like it's the same principle. You can't just walk if you're a kid and you're trying to hang with a group of kids. You just can't walk up to the group of kids and be like, "Hey, I'm trying to hang." Maybe if you're really young, that'll work. But as you get older and society, the societal logic kicks in, then you understand how that works out. Um, but basically, that's the political atlas in a more relatable format. You you initiate your association by basically going through the hoops, and in order to go through the hoops, you gotta know what you're talking about. To know what you're talking about, you got to invest yourself into what's being talked about, and that's how that works out. So that I really feel like that sums up the whole political atlas thing. Any other side notes about that could be the political atlas can be formed off of anything. It just needs a group of people. It is not a don't get it wrong. It's not like it doesn't have to be a business. It doesn't have to be anything besides a conglomerate of people with who are categorized by whatever they decided to form the group on, and then that is how the political atlas gets defined. Going back to another analogy I made when I was talking about how you can essentially separate social circles by whoever how groups are defined. That's essentially what a political atlas is. A an identity that allows for it to be painted as a not painted as a it's basically a sticky for a group of people. Like if you could like not don't be a creep. Don't tell nobody I told you this or that I do this or that I told you to do this. But it's like if you were to take a bunch of people's pictures, right? And then you make a circle with them, right? And then you put a sticky over the circle in a circle, and then that sticky will be what keeps that circle together. It's not like a friendship. We're not talking about friendship here. We're not talking about It's more like a hobbyist thing, right? I talked about that too. So that's essentially what I'm getting at here. And to move things to closer to what I intend to be talking about next. The principles of the political atlas is why technology is so pervasive, because the idea is that technology is just a tool for social essentially for social interaction. There we go. And as you know, social interaction is not dictated by any one point, by any one person. So that is essentially how the political atlas works. You are using tools that may or may not be that may be abstract or may be physical to to create a an environment like a country or a city or even smaller, like a home, figuratively speaking, where people basically congregate, kind of like a church, and this congregation is your stamp, like a logo. Like everybody has their own. Like companies have logos, right? Companies have logos that identify them. You're what you are. Everybody creates their political atlas with a logo, and that logo is dictated by whatever you guys are talking about. So, in my example with the Gimmin Illuminati, that would be their little picture with everybody together about basically being a conglomerate of PC professionals, well, enthusiasts. We'll use the term enthusiast because professional suggests a more technical aspect. It's not really technical, it's more of a basically a skill set. With that said, that wraps up the political atlas talk. Feel like I got the point across. If I didn't, then re-listen to the discussion. I'm pretty sure I made the point. um, shots out. Begin now. Shout out to Juanita Hooper, Shamia Skinner, Chris Vasquez, and my man's at the malls who I ain't forget about you, man. I know I'm being a creep and stuff, remember you, but I was supposed to remember you, but like I said, when my technology malfunctioned or something like that, so I'm gonna keep shouting you out because you know, if you listen, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, then PSP, man, PSP. I'm an ESP. This PSP. You know what I'm talking about. Shout out to anonymous patrons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 21, 22, 23, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 41, 42, 40, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63. Now, if you're asking why I counted like that, is because I was trying to basically not have to sound out every number word thingy, and that still didn't work out because I still ended up getting confused anyway. But anyway, that's the first hour. For the next 7 to 8 minutes, you are welcome to get a break, get you a drink, get you a burger. Well, I don't get you a burger. That might take a little longer. But make you a quick sandwich, the same, man. Commercials and all that. Welcome back. This is the Tech Hour. Now, as you know, the Tech Hour is going to be talking about tech stuff. And what we're going to be talking about today is telephones. Now, that may seem like a weird topic to jump into. I just went on a rant about servers, but I feel like it's a important it's an important thing to talk about because you need to understand what has happened to the telephone. And the reason why is because the telephone is no longer a telephone. To get to the beginning of this, right? Let's begin with the origins of the telephone. Essentially, the idea was to use electricity, right, as a tunnel. It's a closed tunnel that you could scream into, and it will be picked up and sent to whoever's crazy enough to listen to you talk, right? So, in the beginning it was pretty simple, man. The device allowed you to talk to electricity. The electricity did its job and carried over wherever you was trying to receive it from. And then it worked. It got complicated because once people realized, hey, this is a pretty good invention, you had to deal with a lot of caller traffic. And without a computer to do this became a lot of problems. But it did mean that a lot of jobs were created with the beginning of the telephone, because you could best believe you needed people who could pick up. Yes, hold on, I'll connect you. Yes, hold on, I'll connect you. Boom, 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 like that. What you would call a dispatcher nowadays, or operator actually. Same thing. They dispatched it. And how that works out is that you are basically, all you gotta do is pick up the phone. Oh yeah, dialing. I gotta explain dialing. In order to well, dialing wasn't as complicated as it was before. Before, you only needed like an area code and yada yada yada, and then you would hit. Well, you gotta hit the operator up, give them the area code, and then tell them to connect. Well, you gotta tell them to connect you, and then give them the area, yada yada yada. And then what happened after that was that the computer, by the time people got comfortable with this setup, right, the computer was well on its way to its first creation. And once they started to learn how to basically make the computer handle electricity in a useful format, because that was the whole problem, right? The idea was that, that's cool if you can use electricity to light stuff up. That's cool if you could use electricity to basically show up. It's the same thing. It's like, instead of having a permanent light bulb, you would have it will make lights, which you would distinguish as different symbols and digits and stuff. And that wasn't really we're not exactly cracking heads here. They had to make the computer use electricity in more complicated ways. And this complicated what you would call these complicated ways is how they came up with the idea of the process. And once they figured out how to teach the computer through processes, then the computer was able to first of all start working on caller traffic and stuff. And then once they got that set up in the operator spot, and the next battle was getting it to the consumer, which is why it took so long for the smartphone, as you know it today, to come up, because they had to figure out, how can we make a device that can do the operator's job without taking the operator's job, and then basically keep the phone a telephone and not limited to a computer. So what you would call remember they had cell networks, right? You had the how many bars you got, yada yada yada. That was a it was basically your phone acting as a, oh yeah, I forgot to talk about acting as a radio, which also came around after they started really getting fancy with this telephone stuff. And the reason why that they needed that was because that was the beginnings of the computer. The idea that a radio could at least on um a short band um be taken outside instead of needing to be relocated to a specific place, like a like you couldn't take your radio, had to be in had to be in specific areas to get a decent signal and all that stuff. And even then, the signal wasn't perfect. It wasn't what you would call crystal clear today. So then, moving back ahead, once they were able to use the radio and computers together, now you have the cell phone. Because before they had to do what you would call manual operating, right? You call it manual operating is because um 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 what you instead of dialing a number per se, as we call it now, you had to basically, it was like the telegraph, but more not sophisticated. It was like the telegraph, but more you're not using dots and stuff. You're not, like, we're not doing Morse code here. We're doing all I have to do is use Morse code as a signature versus as a means of communication, and now I can talk and yada yada yada. Um, and that transition from dialing to what you would call that transition from Morse code to dialing was the first beginnings with in conjunction with the radio. So what you would call the modern day cell phones, because now you know people getting fancy. You have the cell phone. It's not a smartphone. You have a cell phone at least, and now you can go outside with it. It still was very, if your parents ever showed you, or if any people remember seeing their parents with a cell phone, a old style phone. It was very bulky in terms of the band to signal relationship, and that the phone itself could not reach that far in terms of getting a good signal as well as reaching whoever you needed to reach. So you could probably reach people far away, it just wouldn't be a good signal. Or if you did get a good signal, you probably wouldn't be able to reach that many people. Now, I say probably because quality has always been a distinguisher of market value. So you know that's the argument there. That even then, when they had the old style cell phones, I'm pretty sure if you paid top dollar, you could probably get a pretty good one. It would just be well, it just wouldn't be what you would call a smartphone. Now, the interesting note is that the transition from the telegraph to the telegraph phone, as I would call it, was pretty short, and then the transition from the telegraph phone to a mobile format was pretty long, and then likewise the transition from the cell phone to the smartphone was huge. Like, I was like stupid long, and I say that because We talking, they probably had I say the earliest cell phones were like 60s, 70s, and smartphones, as you know, was early 2000s. Because, it started out with the flip phone once they really got to get it small. And then the flip phone wasn't nothing after the smartphone came out. After the smartphone came out, people was like, well, there it is, folks. We are in the future. And, that explaining that transition is very important because if you notice, when the smartphone came out, the personal computer was right behind it. No, the smartphone was actually behind the personal computer, actually. Yeah. But there's a reason for that, because the idea is that once you purchased a smartphone, it was no longer a phone, it was no longer a telegraph. It wasn't related to either of those at that point. You essentially purchased a mobile computer. And the reason why you purchased a mobile computer is because the whole system of how that worked out became different. The internet allowed for the dawn of the instead of using what you would call short band radio waves, you were using long band radio waves. And the reason why they were called long band radio waves is because the equipment that allowed for the internet essentially outclassed the equipment you would need to expand a short band radio signal. And to explain what I'm talking about, a short band radio signal is what you would get if you had a antenna radio or something that allows you, what you would have in your car. You have a short band radio in your car. You don't have a long band radio in your car because that would be a computer. That's what made the computer a distinguished invention, because it essentially can reach anywhere in the world provided that there is a connection for it, and as you know, a server. Um, how they essentially created a computer that took the name of the phone was that they figured out how to blend short band with long band technology. And what that means is that you take a radio, right? And instead of using it to reach other radios, you use it to reach computers. And once they figured out how to make those two technologies work together, because a radio has its own you're essentially using a computer when you use a radio, right? However, the idea is that there is no it's not a computer as you know it. Like, you wouldn't, like, if you still got a CD player laying around, open it up sometime and you'll see what I'm talking about. A CD player, which, as you know, came out in the early in the late in the late 90s, early 2000s, was a explanation of how the smartphone was able to take off, because you basically took the computer, placed it in a radio format, and that you could seek for other people as you would seek for a radio signal, and essentially not need to have the bulkiness of a CD player, but still have the availability of a computer, which made it easy for them to offer you internet service as well as text messaging. Because if you remember text messaging, that was another feature that used to be independent in the form of the beeper. And I feel like a lot of people missed out on that, because I would have loved to keep the beeper around. I feel like the beeper was within itself its own industry, because if you could text message people without needing internet service, I feel like why not keep that around? Um, I mean, technically you do need. Well, nowadays you need internet service to text message, but back in the day, If you had a beaver, all you needed was to keep it ran on batteries, but you keep it charged and you can hit up anybody who has a beeper. Kind of like a phone, but not really. It was much cheaper. Um, mm, but going back to the whole process of the smartphone basically took the computer. It took the radio process. The process of the radio was crucial to the development of the computer, because you had to explain how how can you get a device to break the limitations of radio while still able to maintain, while still being able to deliver information at a consistent and clear pace. So in order to do that, you had to figure out, how do I get a phone to essentially reach the equipment it needs to reach. And the answer to that was the computer, which, needed the internet. So basically this is how it worked. The computer, once you take the phone, you take the telegraph, and they turned a telegraph phone into a program. And then the telegraph, once you're able to get the computer to understand what a telegraph phone is, then it was just a matter of translating the telegraph phone program to a telegraph phone. So you get how that works out. You basically they basically um short they shortcutted the process. So instead of dealing with a short range telegraph phone, they gave you a long range computer, which is talking to a main computer, which is obviously connected to a telegraph phone, because the idea is that you can't omit the telegraph phone. People's houses still run on telephone lines and yada yada yada. So there's the proof that they're not doing magic. They are just removing all that extra thinking out of the equation, which is easy once you realize how to deliver the information. The whole problem with this situation was getting the main computer to work, which probably explained why it took so long to transition from a cell phone to a smartphone, because they had to figure out, how do I get this computer to explain to the radio what it is talking about. So once you get that, then everything else is like cake and butter, because people think, and I feel like the industry um is it takes advantage of these discrepancies, because nowadays companies offer you phone, text, and the internet as if they not all the same thing. They're making you pay for three different things, but in reality it's all the same thing. Because if they couldn't get the internet to work, then we would just go back to telegraph phones, and then you would need the antenna again, and then it has to communicate like a radio versus a computer that's talking to another computer, which translates to a radio. So you can understand how it can get confusing, because your phone, the smartphone is a computer, right? It still uses a lot of the components that the old telegraph phones use. Because if you remember, even before the smartphone, you still had the electronic keypad, right? Which isn't really um um it isn't really a breaking invention, because they take the same idea. Cell phones run on batteries. You need the battery as electricity fodder. And how that works is, instead of the electric keys being connected to a cable, they are everything is already what you would call the dialing is done inside of the cell phone. The cell phone, you dial the cell phone, you press the keys, they get read as a electronic signature, a electrical signature, and then the phone radios that short band, of course, to a nearby receiver, which you would call a cell phone tower, yada yada yada. So, you can see how early cell phone technology became a race for a monopoly, essentially. Whoever gets their towers built first has the best coverage, and if they have the best coverage, then nobody else can compete with them, because you're not going to build cell phone towers next to cell phone towers. Whoever gets their cell phone towers up first, game over. You work for me now. So, that's just a you can see how this can inspire a very competitive industry, because everybody, you're essentially making buttloads of money off of people selling the same technology over and over again, because most people criticize Apple for selling iPhones over and over again, but I feel like the iPhone argument is irregardless to the smartphone argument. That is not a smartphone, is it? You're selling them computers with additional software. The hardware will never change. You got the touchscreen, but that's not really a change, because the idea is that all you did was integrate a screen with an electrical interface. And what I'm basically saying there is that the this it just the touch screen, only thing it did was show that your phone is not a phone, it's a computer. Because in order to understand a touch screen command, you need to have a process logic. And in order to have a process logic, you need to have a logical processor. Computer stuff. You see what I mean? So it's like, it's silly, man. It's silly. And even nowadays, the telegraph phone is a relic of the past. You can't even get a it's hard enough to find flip phones anymore, so good luck with that. Trying to get a old style, an original radio telegraph phone to work. Oh yeah, my bad. Let me go back in the timeline. You have a telegraph, then you have the telegraph phone, where you have the finger in the finger in the hole. Well, it's your phone, so in your hole dialer, and then you move, big jump. You jump into the radio cell phone, which has a already included electrical keypad. So instead of traveling over a cable, you're traveling over a radio wave. And then once you get to the smartphone era, you've already changed from a physical electrical interface to a what you would call a software electrical interface. And that software hardware changes. That's another not argument, another thing I want to talk about later on. um but yeah, this smartphone stuff is a topic of much discussion, because I feel like if I only want a phone, then give me a phone. Don't force me to buy a computer, because a computer has a system, a whole different system that some people just may not be comfortable with. And the reason why is because computers means that somebody wrote it. And if somebody wrote it, that means that you're basically talking in a language that you don't even know. You know, it's like, I check it. It's like if somebody sold you a computer, right? But everything was in Spanish, right? But you got the same computer as anybody else. The idea is that everything is in Spanish. So, you'll probably figure out what's going on eventually. You keep clicking stuff looks familiar. You got a desktop, you got the home screen, you got the toolbar, and yada yada yada. But the idea is that your ability to navigate the device is severely limited by your ability to decipher the language. And that's the problem with the computer. You don't even know what language it's written in. It's written in multiple languages, by the way. And that's another problem, because you're basically, if somebody knows the languages, they automatically have an advantage over you. They automatically have access to commands, to stuff that you don't have access to, that you would if you knew what to essentially interface with. Um the other argument is that you're overcharging people because you want people to pay for a computer service that they necessarily didn't start with. You can have, I feel like that's the smartphone's fatal flaw. It did too much. Now, the reason why you want to go back to a radio phone is that, in our day and age, technology can be both a gift and a curse. Using a radio phone means that anything that happens over a radio interface is directly under the umbrella of the FCC, which has been around since radios were first created, interestingly enough. So, by blending a computer and a radio, you're basically shirking the FCC of any responsibility, because they can basically say, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about," because since you're dealing with a computer radio, they can basically confuse you and be like, Wait, what are you saying that your phone is having interference?" Which is, if you've looked on any computer device that is under the FCC regulation, any computer device you buy is subject to interference, and that interference is fair play. However, if you were talking just the radio, then the FCC is responsible for interference, because that basically means that either somebody's listening or somebody is intercepting your radio transmissions. In which case, they have to investigate and go through all of that. So that's why I'm like, I feel disrespected that they will wait so late to basically say that, we're going to combine the computer and the phone and stop selling phones. Well, we're going to combine a radio phone and a computer phone and stop selling radio phones, which is, I feel like that's a disrespect, because if I grew up in a time where radio phones existed, then I reserve the right to have access to a radio phone. And if I want a computer phone, I'll let you know. And I feel like that's just a consequence of the age, that, you know, technology will always jump, and people will not always notice it jumping. So, take you can't you the best thing you can do, like, I feel like technology made the historian God, in the sense that if you keep up with all the old technology, getting the new technology is easy. If you keep up with the old technology, right, you will see these things happen. You will see the shortcuts taken. You will see the backwards progression that technology takes sometimes, like shirking physical hardware memory for software memory. Um you will see the essentially disrespect to your intelligence, because you're basically saying that I need a your computer is better than my radio, but it's not, because your computer needed my radio to work. So for you to say, oh, the computer is king over the radio, that's a bunch of bull. That's a bunch of cocker cockapoo bull, because you know I don't think there's any device out here that doesn't have radio components in it. And any computer, take the best computer out there, and I guarantee it'll have radio components in it. Guaranteed, no lies. So in this smartphone era, software era, I can go on forever with this era stuff. Um, Telephones are just a number of devices that have essentially been had a guise thrown over them, because most people look at smartphones and say phone. Nobody thinks computer phone. Nobody thinks computer alone. Nobody. I don't think that. I doubt the average kid would even recognize their smartphone as a computer in terms of being a desktop, or a any whatever they call a computer nowadays. If you told the kid that his cell phone could do everything a desktop could do, he probably wouldn't believe you. Um, you know, and then if you show the kid the original, if you like, if you show the kid, how far back can I go, a radio phone, and compared it to the smartphone, and told them to tell you the difference, I doubt he'd know that neither. So it's not a intelligence thing. Is more of a lack of information thing that companies are taking advantage of, and I feel like that's a disrespect, because you could have loyal customers that will pay for your radio phones for the rest of their life, because the idea is that the radio phone is dependable. I don't have to ask why my radio phone is not working. My radio phone will always work. The question then becomes, will my radio phone always be supported by hardware? That's the problem. And in this growing computer era, probably not, because companies are set on the idea that computers will be the wave of the future, which if you're entitled to that opinion. But if I'm 30, 40, 50 plus, and I'm growing up around radio phones, I want a radio phone. I don't want a computer phone. I want a radio phone. So that's just a thought, a couple of thoughts on that. More importantly, I feel like the computer is usurping radio technology, but not in a way that you would think, because telephones will always depend on radios in order to work, right? Because the idea is that even though you're using a program to make a phone call, the actual completion of the phone call wouldn't be possible without radio equipment. So the radio will never go away. The radio will never be obsolete. It can get better, but it can never be replaced. So the idea that a radio phone cannot survive in today's era is a lie. And anybody that would tell you otherwise is basically selling you a bridge, man. Why they've decided to why they decided to just blend all of those things together, I'll never know. Why they took away the options, I'll never know. But I am a proponent of the simple voice I just want to talk on the phone radio. If I want the idea is that the resources, if even if you look at your smartphones today, right? Smartphones don't last long. Their battery, if you don't use it, is like 6 hours, right? They try to lie and say 12, 24, all of this ridiculous stuff. But realistically, if your phone is active on a network, is using has a good internet plan, and is you have whatever apps, you're gonna have apps on there. That's the problem. It's a computer too, so you're gonna have apps that's eating away at this battery life. Yeah, this phone is doing too much on a technological level. We're gonna move away from the my personal feelings. On a technological level, the smartphone is overdone. It's including too much. I should be able to leave my phone alone. I feel like the smartphone is more of a home phone than a mobile phone, because the idea is that I'm gonna always be stuck near an outlet because this phone don't know how to freaking keep a charge. Cause you got me playing computer with a device that should have just been a radio to begin with. It started a radio. I don't know what happened. Um, you know, but that's just a testament to what's going on. And no pun intended, like that's ridiculous, because the idea behind a futuristic device is that it is supposed to do stuff that is that pushes the technological envelope, right? But if we're talking about a device that can't even last a 24-hour period because it's so um limited in multiple formats in multiple areas, this is not technology anymore. You're basically selling people garbage and getting away with it. If you had a if the idea is that if it relies on computer technology, it should just be its job should just be to be a computer. Radio phones were their own job, because the idea is that I should be able to be reachable with no outlet for 24 hours. With no excessive battery charge or nothing like that. My radio phone should be able to hold the charge for 24 hours in any day. And that's just that's not even a technological innovation. That should just be a basic, because the radio phone has been around for so long. It makes no sense that it can't hold a 24-hour charge. And if it can't hold a 24-hour charge, I want a phone that can hold a 24-hour charge. If the kids want something to text with, then the computer phones is for them, because that's more closer to their culture anyway. They should have a phone that meets their needs, like basically instant messaging and social networking. Computers, what the heck, man? Why is this so hard? The smartphone has blended adult and kid cultures together, and it hasn't worked out, in my opinion, because the adult phones don't need to have internet, and the kid phones don't need to have radio. And the fact that companies are not understanding this is like, and for me as a person, I'm like I'm like the angel on your shoulder right now for your phone. If your phone has shoulders, I'll be the angel. The companies are the devil, man. They're telling you, buy better, buy bigger, buy yada yada yada. I'm telling you, focus. What do you need this device for? Do you need this device to call people, or do you need this device to surf the internet? You don't need the device to do the both at the same time, because to be honest with you, your day is not going to be taken up by both. To be honest, you're either going to have people to call, or you're going to have the desire to surf the internet, and both things require time to be given to them. So I feel like that's just a realistic explanation, because a work phone by definition should be able to last at least a 8-hour work shift. A smartphone cannot last a 8-hour work shift, especially if you're talking about a phone with apps, which is going to have apps, but after you get it out the store, you're going to put additional apps on it, right? And once you start using the apps that's already on it, that's burning battery life, burning battery life, burning battery life. You can't even use your phone to surf the internet on your leisure time if you expect to also use it as a radio phone. But that's me being a strategist of technology. And the reason why I call myself that is because I feel like that's the end. It's a inner engineer thing, right? Everything should be built for a purpose, right? You build houses to live in, you build cars to move in. When did we stop using this logic with smartphones? Do you want to call somebody, or do you want to use the internet and instant messaging? You don't need to have both. You don't. I don't know. The counter argument to this is that just let technology sort the problem out and everything will be okay, right? But I'm like, the problem should have been got sorted out, because with the whole, everybody remember 1999, man. If you don't, you probably dead already. But 1999 was significant because that was the what you would call the beginning of the new century, right? To be alive during the beginning of the new century meant a lot of things. It meant that you were in the beginning. You did when time opened up the doorways to a new century. You were at you had the front seat to whatever was planned to happen, right? So to argue that things weren't planned would just be another insult to my intelligence. So that's it, man. I, I'm not trying to turn these technological things into a rant, but this is. I can't stress the points enough, man. This technology is doo doo, man. Especially in terms of telephones, man, because the telephone started out so well, and to see it get turned awry like this is stupid. Telephones were supposed to be a means of communication, and if you create new means of communication, you should create new means of using this communication, not, oh, let me take a shortcut and just throw everything together. No. And it may sound dumb. Wouldn't that mean you got two phones then, if you got a radio phone and a computer phone? Well, it wouldn't be as dumb if you think about the fact that the radio phone would always do its job, which is basically to keep you connected with whoever you trying to stay connected with no excuses. And the computer phone would be more efficient by not needing to allocate battery resources to a radio that is going to eat that away, guaranteed. Like people think that running apps is eating away at battery. Eating away at battery on a percentage level is the radio. It's the phone. It's the reason. Think about it. That was the whole reason the phone started at home, because the idea is that you need a constant source to keep it going. It is, and I know you've noticed this before. If you ever use your smartphone and talk for an hour, that mug heat up like a freaking like an oven, right? The phone it starts stressing its own self out, right? So that's just that's your realization. The radio is the real eater of your battery, and if the radio is the real eater of your battery, you need a separate device to handle this radio, because the radio is greedy. It will always be yum 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 yum. Now the computer, on the other hand, laptops eat a lot of resources, but you know that's the reason they created the desktop, right? Because the idea is that a real computer is like another radio, because you are using a device that needs electricity to process, what you call process, right? It's not really processing. The computer communicates with itself using electricity. In order to communicate with itself at a what you would call a um 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 what you would call that, John? At they say that computers communicate at a nano rate, right? Whatever that means, right? In order for the computer to communicate at a rate that it communicates at, it needs to eat a lot of energy, because electricity has, yeah, probably people don't know this, but electricity moves freaking fast, man. Stupid fast. I wouldn't wish electrocution on anybody, to be honest with you. But electricity moves pretty freaking fast, and that's the reason why computers are even useful. Because if it wasn't for electricity moving as fast as it does, computers probably wouldn't be as efficient as they are. So you got computers you got computers, talking with electricity zipping back and forth, and that's going to require more electricity, because if you ever tried, it's like walking versus running, right? Radio phones walk, computers like to run. So put that into perspective. Besides that, man, that's. I just wanted to get that out there, that the smartphone is not the quintessential phone. It's not even a freaking phone anymore. It's just a it's a sad excuse for a computer, because if you told me to use a smartphone over a laptop, I would laugh at you. If you told me to use a smartphone over a desktop, I would laugh at you even more. If you told me to use a smartphone even over a console, I would laugh at you. If you told me to use a smartphone over a handheld, I would then laugh at you more. The smartphone is a failed computer design. And I say it's a failed computer design because it will never be more efficient than any industry computer. It will never be more efficient than a phone. It will never a radio phone. And it can't even compete with the telegraph phone, because the telegraph phone will never run out of energy by definition, because the telegraph phone is the home phone. So the real question is why do people even use smartphones in the first place? Why did people switch over to the from the radio phone to the smartphone? Now everybody hasn't switched over, very true, but I feel like a majority of people has. So I don't know. I would if you ever had a track phone, right? And they're called track phones because they run on what you call cards, right? They're not really cards. They're just the phone company has in order to save themselves trying to figure out how to turn a radio phone into a smartphone plan. The radio phone basically makes you pay for airtime, right? And how that works is they get a supplier to what you would call what you call it, type out not type out but generate codes, right? Now this is why the radio is a computer. Well, it's an early computer because the radio is going to look for codes, right? Well, it's not looking for codes, but it's going to use these codes to communicate, right? And you know, the idea is that these codes are your minutes, your talk time. So the track phone was a good phone because it was a computer as far as what you needed a computer to do for a radio. So instead of needing a phone that required this that required distant like the remember when VTech came out with the mobile home phone, right? So all you needed to do was stay in range and then boom, you basically had a cell phone. They took that idea of wireless communication and just basically used it to extend the range of the phone as well as what it could do for you by basically saying that you know it's a cell phone, it's a radio phone. We're not communicating with your phone um through a computer, but your phone has computer capabilities without having the excessive stuff like the internet and all that other stuff. All it had was basic it's the reverse of the smartphone basically. The smartphone has bare bones radio stuff so that it can do its job, and then a lot of computer stuff. The radio phone has bare bones computer stuff so that it can function without needing to constantly be updated by a a phone computer network, and then the radio just does the rest. And that was the beauty of it. It was like smartphone simplified. And then I find it ironic that smartphone simplified came before smartphones, and now that smartphones is, we don't see any more smartphones simplified. And that's the end of that. Um, yeah. Shout out Tom again. Juanita Hooper, Shamia Skinner, Chris Vasquez, and my PSP buddy. I didn't find you, but we'll run into each other eventually. Shout out to anonymous patrons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, and 63. For my supporters, yeah, you guys don't worry about me. My content will always be up. The only thing you need to ask, what's up with the charity and what's up with this business stuff. Charity, I'm gonna get my answer tomorrow. Well, today actually. I'm gonna have it by tomorrow's video. The business thing. It's like it's making me feel like a little kid again. Basically, whenever I had a problem as a little kid, I would just leave it alone because it annoyed me so much that I couldn't fix it immediately. So that's what that's where I'm at right now. I'm mildly frustrated, so I have to wait for my common sense to solve the problem for me. But besides that, um, yeah, my mind is flowing, man. I'm trying to always do stuff that will get you, my supporters, involved. I'm always thinking about new ways to do stuff, new ways to basically do business. And besides that, the content keeps me busy any other time. So with that said, thank you for listening. And yeah.